Welcome to Crowd. We're on the road this week at Gymshark's HQ in Solihull. We're going to be speaking to Chief Brand Officer Noel Mack about Gymshark, the growth journey and everything branding. Noel, thank you for hosting us.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for, that's weird, isn't it? You're the host, but we're hosting at Gymshark.
I know, it's quite a setup you've got going on over here.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's so the podcast studio was born out of rather than having, so company newsletters, right, that a lot of companies will have, updates on this, hey guys, we're doing that, whatever. Given the average age of our workforce, it's quite similar to our sort of marketing strategy, really, like meeting your customers where they are rather than trying to force them somewhere else. When you think of like the average age of the employees at Gymshark, podcasts are just a much more palatable, much more common, way to digest information. So we thought, similar to our marketing, why would we not do that in podcast form? So any big company announcements or changes or whatever else, it might be me and Ben or Steve, our previous CEO, or we do interviews with new members of staff who join, or around Pride Month, Black History Month, whatever else, we'll do certain topics and stuff like that. It's just a really cool way to connect with our sort of workforce in, got Hong Kong, Mauritius, Denver, and as soon as we finish up in here, we press file, save as, publish, and everybody hears it wherever they are, and they can listen to it in their car, on the train, on the tube, on their commute in Hong Kong, wherever they might be, whatever time. So yeah, it's just I think it's the future, to be honest.
Properly living the sort of digital first kind of methodology.
Trying, having a go.
Yeah, it's been quite a story, hasn't it, Gymshark? I mean, like the fastest ever consumer brand to hit £1 billion quite recently. Starting off from 7 years ago in Ben's parents' house.
In the conservatory at the back.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. It's like, that growth story, obviously you came in quite early on, didn't you? You were working quite close with Ben with your old agency. Do you want to give us a bit of a kind of a background about that sort of started happening?
I do, but before we do that, I've got to big you up, right, for everybody listening, because Ad donated a substantial amount of money to Birmingham Women and Children's Hospital for doing this. It's a charity that we really care about. Obviously, we're from Birmingham. So yeah, man, you should. This is the kind of guy that we need running podcasts that's doing great things like that. So on behalf of the women and children of Birmingham, thank you very much.
Well, thanks. I mean, obviously, I've told you before we started the podcast, my mum's a nurse. I've been around the health service. We've seen what amazing things that the health service have done over the last
couple of years,
especially. 2 years.
Right?
I mean, like just in general, forever. But yeah, it was a bit of a no-brainer, really, to be honest. When I saw you were doing a dragon boat race, I believe you did all right in that as well.
I'm a bit of a dragon boater. No, I'm not terrible. The question. What was the question? So, a bit of background on Gymshark.
Yeah, just kind of like how you and Ben got together. I mean, obviously I've heard on the grapevine that you were doing some work for them, and then you ended up joining. But how did that end up happening?
So, I had an agency before, right, and this is in the early days of the sort of marketing that we see everywhere today. And I spent all my time trying to convince people with budget, marketing directors, CMOs, etc., why content was a good idea and why social media was a good idea, and all this stuff. Ben and Gymshark were one of the first clients that came along who actually already knew. They were like, we're already on board. You don't need to sell it to us. We just want to start doing stuff. And it was like, well, that's liberating. Do you know what I mean? Did a few pieces, went really well. Got very busy very quickly with the Gymshark work. It started off as just, would make something cool for those guys over there. Then a bit more. And before you know it, it was like 20 days of the working month was on all things Gymshark. Do you know what I mean? And then one day Ben came along and said, how'd you fancy sort of coming on board? I said no at first, wasn't for me. And then the Gymshark thing just kept taking off, man, and kept taking off. And I'm driving along one day listening to Sheryl Sandberg on a podcast. And she talked about why she made the decision to jump over to Facebook. And she came up with this line, which was like, if the rocket ship's... I think she said, I wasn't entirely happy with the job. She said, but I thought, if the rocket ship's taking off, don't worry about which seat you're sitting in. Just get on it. Yeah. And I'm driving along and I was like, oh no, am I missing the rocket ship? Do you know what I mean? So
it is a rocket ship.
Yeah, man. So picked up that conversation again with Ben and Steve, the CEO at the time. And then, I came on board, and that was 5 years ago. And I was in an interview yesterday for Gymshark. I was like the 9th round interview or whatever else. And they asked me for my experience and like what's it like as a place to work. And I'd never sort of said this before, but it's honestly true. I said, you would think, having gone from running your own agency, I've never had like a job, right, to what I do now, there would be days where I'd sit, get frustrated and think, man, I didn't used to have to put up with this stuff or whatever. Right? You'd think there would be those days now and again. There hasn't been a single day where I've thought, I wish I hadn't done this. Do you know what I mean? Every single day since jumping on board with this mission that we're on, it's been the right decision. Do you know what I mean? Every single day, in the darkest moments and the worst times at Gymshark, it was the right thing to do. Do you know what I mean? And I've never looked back since. So.
Yeah, I think like mission and rocket ship probably sums things up pretty well, to be fair. But the one thing that really, really comes across, and obviously you guys speak about it a lot in your comms, is community. And I think I tend to talk to our guests about community and culture, and it seems like you're the trendsetters for this. I think you've really got that understanding of who your audience is. What kind of built that? What was the thinking that led you down that route, and why has it been such a powerful thing to grow in Gymshark so quickly?
Honestly, because it just... So, I'm going to answer that question with like another question that people ask often, right? Which is, why do you think Gymshark was successful, right? Like, what was it? And they expect me to say, I know they want an answer like, use 5 hashtags instead of 4 or something like that, right? Or some little trick. It's not that. I honestly think one of the things that really sort of propelled us at the beginning was like the fact that nobody knew how it was supposed to be done, right? We didn't know you were supposed to do like a brand dip into a representative set of into a representative sample of people to do surveys. We didn't know any of that, right? And it was just like, it was 19-year-old kids. All their insight came from hanging out in the comments on YouTube, and that was how this thing got started. And we just kept running that mentality. Do you know what I mean?
It's almost like you did what Elon Musk did. You've kind of like looked at a business or like an area of the market and just gone, just rip it up. And let's just do it the way that feels instinctively right.
I mean,
to us.
You compared us to Elon Musk, not me, right? but I love that comparison. And yeah, because it makes sense, because I love what Elon does, right? I love that he looked at the car showroom model and went, this feels weird, like cars that you're not allowed to drive, but you can sort of touch them and open them, and a guy in a suit walks over and says, hey, you interested? And all that. Let's just do away with that and e-commerce instead. Like, I love that thinking. Do you know what I mean?
Like that, everything they do is so slick. Like, to go on to Tesla's website to buy a car is so fast. Like, you go on to have a look around before you know it, you're nearly ordering it like 6, 7.
I said this at a talk last week, right? I was like, there were people were asking about like e-commerce advice, and I said, listen, like, I'm not the man to ask about e-commerce advice. E-com is just the vehicle we happen to use. Like, I'm a brand person, right? And right now, the cool vehicle is e-commerce. I said, but if you do want e-commerce advice, I was like, anybody here who's got an e-commerce website, when you go home, go onto your own website and see how many clicks it takes you to check out, and then go on Tesla.com and compare it to theirs. Trust me, it's an interesting and an eye-opening one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I really admire what they do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you are in e-commerce, but I think most people see you as a brand, and I think it's quite hard to kind of separate that community piece and brand. And I think lots of people think brands like, oh, I'll do a logo and I'll use this like colours and this tone of voice, but the thing that really drives home with Gymshark as a brand is it's who you are as a business.
It's what they say about you, not what you say about you. Do you know what I mean?
Listening to them as well, like, you can definitely tell, like, you've got your finger on the pulse of like everything in the comment section, from every Instagram post that goes out to comments on Trustpilot and that kind of thing. It's like, it does seem to be one in the same thing. Would you say that brand is community? I did the same thing.
I don't know if brand is community. I just think brand, for me, brand is like what they say about you when you're not in the room. I've been quoted a million times as saying this, right? When I wake up in the morning, my alarm goes off. One of the first things I do, I check my messages, next thing, Twitter, and I search for the word Gymshark without the at, because when they're atting you, they want to talk to you, right? So you're in the room for that conversation. When they're just writing, I hate Gymshark without the at, or I love Gymshark without the at, because their order got messed up, or they love us because of some campaign thing that we did, or whatever else. Those are the conversations that mean the most to me. Do you know what I mean? Those are the ones that I want to be exposed to, and those are the ones that help me shape the thinking and, you know what I mean, what it is that we do. Honestly, if you listen to your community as intently as we do, or your customer base, or whatever you call them, I don't think you can go that far wrong. Do you know what I mean? The obvious decisions become, the right decisions become quite obvious, because it's this constant feedback loop that you can iterate on. Do you know what I mean? And in this world right now where you can pull out a viral campaign on a moment's notice by reacting to something that just happened on Sex and the City 2 nights ago, or whatever else, like, you have to be in that loop. So
you're very quick at reacting to stuff as well. How does that work, like, with the internal dynamics? I know you've got quite a big team, but like, every time something drops, you seem to be the first people there to react to something. So obviously when lockdown happened last year, you were straight on that with Home-Shark. Every time something seems to happen, you seem to just be there and reacting really quickly. Have you got dedicated teams just kind of scouring social and seeing what's going on, what people are saying to react to that?
I think there's a mix of a few things. Right, there isn't one solution to that thing that you just mentioned. We do have a team in social whose job it is to react fast to things, but obviously they can only go so far, right, with their own thing. We can be agile as a whole brand and whole company, I think, at times, and I think that's just because it's bred into what we do. Like what Ben started all those years ago was a very agile, disruptive business, and we keep that true. We keep that as part of our values and our sort of purpose to this day, that we want to remain that agile and disruptive. So I think trusting people who are way smarter than me, people who are way younger and cooler than me, to say, trust me, this is the way to go, Noel, and I go, all right, let's do it. Do you know what I mean? It was a I think she was 19 at the time, the brilliant young lady who came up with the Gymshark thing. Me and Ben weren't going to do that, right? Steve, the CEO at the time, wasn't going to do that. They were like, we know this works, cool, do your thing then, do you know what I mean? And giving that autonomy. But then equally, when it is a bigger thing that does need our sign off, or, you know, it's a bigger spend, or it's a bit riskier, or whatever else, I think we understand that, you know, there's risk and there's reward. There's tons of things we get wrong, but when we get it right, we get it really right. That thing that you referenced before we came in there last week on Cameo, or the week before, tricking celebrities into bigging us up by calling ourselves Gymshark. Obviously that needed a bit of high level of sign off and some budget and whatever else, but yeah. I think, you know, when you've got sort of more lateral thinkers like Ben as the founder and myself at that sort of, you know, C-suite level of the company, I think people can get their ideas over a bit easier. Do you know what I mean? We have some obviously unbelievable, more sort of numeric people, more commercial people, whatever else on our board, and that they're amazing at what they do. But then having that counterbalance for the people who are ready to keep us sort of on the pulse as well, I think is really important.
Yeah, tell us a bit about the culture that exists in the business then. It seems like you guys are like completely available. It seems that you're accessible to all the team as well. It doesn't feel like for the success that there's massive egos in this building at all. Like from what I've seen of you guys, it doesn't seem like there's a big ego there.
No, I'm really glad to hear you say that. I think, honestly, I'm not sure. I think part of that comes down to us not knowing how it's done. A few people have joined the business lately and we're like, what do you mean you don't have an EA? That's wild. How do you not have an EA? Right, we've only recently got EAs. And I think we always thought of it as that's a bit of a braggy thing to do. We now realise actually it's just a much more efficient way to run your time, do you know what I mean? And the best use of your time. But because we didn't know, and it took other people to come in and go, no, honestly, you guys really should have them, right? We just sort of cracked on and just kept being the same people we were when, you know, nobody wanted us on podcasts and nobody cared what we thought. Do you know what I mean? Nobody here has a corner office. Ben sits at the same desk that interns sit at. Do you know what I mean? Nobody even has really a designated place to sit. You rock up in the morning, find a place to squat, and that's where you're at. Do you know what I mean? Restaurant, Refuel, everybody sits on the same tables. I mean, it's a great level of that. Is like, you know, when they say like the kitchen is the heart of the home, it definitely is here. Yeah. I remember seeing times where when we first opened GSHQ, our first building up the road, and I'd see Steve, again our old CEO, sit down next to an intern and just be like, hello, what do you do then? And they just sit there having a conversation and lunch together, and then they go off and he goes off to talk about, you know, unicorn status, valuations, whatever else, and they go back to learning how this business works. Do you know what I mean? But it's that great leveler. And the gym downstairs below here, exact same thing.
That's unreal, that gym.
You like it, yeah?
Yeah.
It's cool, isn't it?
Yeah, I might be coming down.
Yeah, man, do you think? But it's the same thing in there. Like, there's a lad in my team, Ash Wilson. He's the head of creative. When we're in the office, when we're in the gym, he's the CEO. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's a true athlete, ran a 24-hour marathon, all these kind of things. Equally, like, trying to think of an example, Gemma, our chief data officer, well, she wanted to learn to deadlift, so she drops Ash a message. And I remember coming in the one day and seeing Gem having a deadlift like tutorial from Ash. Do you know what I mean? It was really interesting how the roles had reversed almost. And and I think we just, I don't know, it's that humility and that, you know, nobody thinking they're above anybody else or anything like that. It's been at the core of what we've done for the longest time, and, you know, I don't see it changing anytime soon.
Has that helped you grow? Because, I mean, a lot of companies, they'll get to a certain point and they'll just max out, and they'll get too many layers of management in, and the business changes. I mean, that seems to have stayed quite static with you guys.
Plenty of businesses have grown with corner offices and reserved parking spots and all that stuff, right? So I don't know if that's helped us grow. I think what it's helped is people go on LinkedIn a lot about our like employee evangelism. Like, if you've ever noticed, when somebody gets a job here, they post on LinkedIn and it's like, landing my dream job, they're at the front doing this, setting for the Gymshark logo and all that. And I remember somebody writing a thing saying, like, when these guys sell their book on employee evangelism, I'm buying it, right? I think that's like a happy byproduct to just a really great culture. And like you say, that humility, do you know what I mean? I remember employing a retoucher back in the day. Like, this is when we only had like 50, 60 staff. And I'm welcoming her on the morning saying, yeah, you need anything, da-da-da-da. And then Ben walked past behind me and she was like, there's Ben Francis. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, he comes in here. And I was like, yeah, he sits right there. And she was like, sat 2 seats up from me. And I sat there like this, like freaking out, do you know what I mean? But yeah, the same thing's true today. So yeah, I don't know if it helped us get ahead, but I don't think it'll change anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, you seem to have done a lot of sort of zigging when other people have zagged. And again, obviously, the recent announcement with the shop in London.
You've been doing research, you have. You're a proper podcaster, you are. You've been Googling before this.
I mean, obviously, I follow the most exciting businesses. I mean, the whole point of doing the podcast is because I'm interested in business, and obviously you guys have been setting the pace for quite a while. But yeah, I mean, seeing the shop open, and obviously everybody else is doubling down on metaverse and NFTs, and we'll come to that later on about Web 3.0 if you think it's something that we should be talking about. But yeah, going back into that physical space, and like, you've done a really great job of joining digital and physical, being an e-commerce business, but getting people in the gym, getting people doing things lifestyle, mental health wise. And joining that physical and digital journey. Like, tell us a bit about what you're going to be doing with the physical shop in London. So
I can't give too much away at the minute because it's still being designed. We've got a few things we know we'd like to do. Whether we can actually pull that off or not, because we're ambitious with this stuff, is sort of up for debate. So I can't give too much. But I suppose the one thing I would say is, again, we're a brand, right? No matter what happens, like Rolls-Royce is Rolls-Royce. So I'm not comparing us to Rolls-Royce, but I'm just making the point of Rolls-Royce, whether e-commerce becomes the play, whether NFTs become the play, whether iOS 17.9 comes out and everything changes in cookies again, it's like, well, they're still going to be there, right, in one way or another. I think if you get tied to one particular thing, you could sort of pigeonhole yourself a little bit, do you know what I mean? And I think we believe that getting out into the world and sort of touching our community and hanging out with them and feeling them and smelling them and them doing the same for us and everything else will always be a big part of the Gymshark story. We've been events and in real life moments with Gymshark we're right at the beginning, and I'm sure they'll be there all the way until we're dead and buried. This is just the latest evolution of that. We started at events and expos, then we started doing these little meetups in like cities around the world where it was like me and Ben in a rental car with 3 influencers in the back, and we just tweet
pop-up shops and that kind of thing.
Well, even before the pop-up shops, it was just, hey, we're in Times Square, see you there at 12, go. And then people just landed. We didn't have any product, we didn't have anything, and we just all sit. And then we say to people, we're going to train at such and such gym in Venice Beach after, if everybody wants to come. And then everybody would land down there, we'd all lift together, weird. Then that turned into pop-up stores, and then the pop-up stores became massive, and it was 8-hour queues to get into the pop-up stores. And this is just the sort of natural evolution of all of that, do you know what I mean? So I think people see it. People who aren't particularly close to the brand are like, wow, e-commerce giant Gymshark goes bricks and mortar, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't feel like that huge of a leap to us. It's just the natural progression. But
what you're not doing at this point is opening 350 stores all around the UK.
Exactly.
It's a flagship store, isn't it? Are you going to go down the route that Apple have done with those sort of like a handful of stores in key cities as an experience? Again, or is it just going to be a standard like retail shop and things on shelves, or is it going to be a bit more?
No, certainly not a standard retail shop. Not sure on the key cities thing. The one thing that I think Apple, and I believe this is Angela Ardern's design or her sort of thing. The idea that the Apple store is the town square to the Apple community. Love that. Do you know what I mean? So you can infer things from that about what's going to happen for the fitness community in the Gymshark store.
So that
was my politician's answer, by the way.
Yeah, no, I know. I can see where you're going. So with the community, I mean, obviously people spoke about you potentially opening gyms and all that kind of thing, and I think there's probably multiple ways that you can obviously move the business, and I think you probably react to things as they're appropriate. Brings us to, obviously, there's a load of talk at the minute, wherever you go on TikTok, Instagram, about what we mentioned earlier, sort of NFTs, Web3, metaverse. Like, do you think this is something that retailers, if there's somebody sat in Birmingham today in his mum and dad's garage starting the next Gymshark, should they be looking at that, or should they be thinking about much more basic things and getting involved with influencers and growing a community?
I think they should come and work here, first of all.
And learn the ropes.
I always say we're more scared of the next 19-year-old in the garage than we are of our big competitors,
Nike
you know. Listen, I haven't got a clue. I'm not in a position. I'm nowhere near smart enough to be telling the next 19-year-old entrepreneur what he should or shouldn't be doing. Do you know what I mean? I think explore everything. One of my close personal friends and one of the best creatives I know, who incidentally used to work here, is now doing the most ridiculously sick NFT project. And you know, if it's two things are fulfilling to creatives, right? I feel like there's, everybody needs to make money, and they want recognition for their work, and they just want a creative output. Let me tell you now, he's smashing all three of those things, right? Doing NFTs, and 6 months ago, he wasn't even thinking about it. Do you know what I mean? And he'd never heard of an NFT, and today he's absolutely killing it. He's got a huge drop tomorrow called Polygons. You guys should check that out. It's really cool. So yeah, honestly, I don't know. I just think that something that a place where I think we've succeeded is we get our towel down early on new ideas, right? What I mean by that is like
you're even beating the Germans to that.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you get the reference, because I said this in Abu Dhabi last week and nobody understood what I meant. But when you go on a European holiday, right, you got to get down to the beach and get your towel down on your good spot. Like we get to beaches early and get our towel down, right? We joined TikTok when it was called Musical.ly, right? So it's no surprise now that we're the second biggest fitness brand in the world on TikTok. Do you know what I mean? Because we got to that beach, we got our towel down. So yeah, to the entrepreneurs that's trying to do something, that'd be my little piece of advice. But
yeah, I mean, part of me saw obviously Gary V coming on board.
Yeah, man. I was literally going to call him just before this talking NFTs. So I'm very NFT'd up at the minute.
Yeah, I was thinking, right, so I'm probably going to be buying Gymshark gear somewhere in the metaverse at some point in the future. Maybe that's the next store. Somewhere in like Web3.
Yeah, maybe it's not. Yeah, the first one might be London, and the second one might be just .eth or something.
Just dress up your avatar in full Gymshark gear.
Well, you saw Nike's latest acquisition, like 2 days ago. That the NFT studio, like that looks incredible, man. Yeah, I can't wait to see what they do with that.
Yeah, and I think obviously there's so many different avenues that you can go down, isn't there? And it just opens things up. So, is there a danger that you can get involved in too much and go first too many times? I mean, you talk about obviously getting the towel down first, but are some things a little bit too big of a risk? Do you need to, at this size now, still be first there with everything that comes up that looks like it might be the next big thing?
Yeah, I suppose if you try and jump on absolutely everything, you might end up sort of, what's the word?
Sort of diluting what you do?
Or just sort of trying to innovate with reckless abandon and forgetting what your values are. Do you know what I mean? Our values are at the forefront of everything we do. So yeah, we'll join TikTok as long as we can represent the Gymshark brand well on TikTok, right? Yeah, we'll do NFTs maybe one day if we think we can represent the brand well in NFTs. If we think it's going to dilute our message and our brand purpose, we hold that dearer than anything, right? Uniting the conditioning community, which is our purpose. Like we're so led by that, it's ridiculous. Anything that helps us do that, we will do, right? So when you think of the fact that Red Bull's mission was to give people wings, right? And they're obsessed with that purpose. Now their product is an energy drink, right?
Yeah.
So why do they own an F1 team? And why did they drop Felix Baumgartner out of space? And
they were just getting in the places where their customers' eyeballs were, weren't they?
And just giving people wings and just being obsessed with the mission. The Red Bull Flugtag, the air race over London. Let's just be obsessed with our purpose. And whatever that means, that means. I mean, again, Amazon, it was a bookstore, but the purpose was to be the most customer-centric business in the world. And now look at everything they do. Do you know what I mean? So like, I honestly think there'll be a day where somebody's turning around to their friend and go, do you know Gymshark? Do you know they actually started off selling gym clothes? Do you know what I mean? Because by then, we're so purpose obsessed, we'll be doing so much else other than that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think like the purpose thing's interesting. I think it can mean different things as well. I saw last year that Unilever's like biggest growth brands, I think 70% of Unilever's growth came from brands with purpose. Now that might be that sort of core value of the business, but it might also be something like sustainability, the environment, Black Lives Matters, Pride movements, or whatever those topical things are. You guys seem to be out there as well talking about that. Is that central to the core values of the business as well?
Yeah, because I think like if you try and be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to everyone. Do you know what I mean? I think you have to have an opinion to a certain extent. I think that in 2021 or very nearly 2022. People, it's no longer just I give you cash, you give me product, like it would have been at Argos back in the day, right? I think these days people vote with their pounds and their dollars and their lira and their everything else, right? It's not just a here you go, cheers. It's a but what do you stand for? Why should I vote for you with my money, right? Yeah. That's why we've seen amazing brands like Patagonia do so well recently. Do you know what I mean? Because you know what they stand for. It bleeds through every single thing that they do. Do you know what I mean? So you vote for what the Patagonia values and mindset and everything else when you buy from them.
And it's doing it consistently and then kind of reacting to things that happen as well. I mean, like, you spoke about Pret and something that they did
During COVID,
when COVID happened, with sort of like giving coffee away, reducing the price of their items. Do you want to give us a bit of background on that and why that kind of hit home for you?
For me, so the reason that one was so great was it was the values plus the agility, right, that made Pret a Manger, which is like a coffee sandwich shop thing here in the UK. COVID happened and lockdown happened, and so fast they went out and went, right, free coffee for anybody who works in the NHS and 50% food, right? And I was so impressed because it was like, during a time where everyone was really worried, they were hunkering down, their board were getting together and figuring out, right, what's going on with our cash flow and what does this mean for the business and blah, blah, blah. They almost, like, again, with almost sort of reckless abandon, went, okay, while we're figuring that out, we need to look after the NHS, right? And they put their values on display for the world to see. And the Irish Taoiseach said something at the time which really, really inspired me, and I kept repeating it on this podcast for the guys internally and whenever I spoke to my team, which was, he said, let them say of us, when times were at their worst, we were at our best. And like Pret, when times were at their worst, on day one of it going bad, they were at their best, right? And I'm sure after that, Costa and Starbucks and everybody else did their NHS thing or whatever else, after others had seen it and they were inspired by that, right? No offence to them, I think being inspired by great acts is a great thing. I think part of the reason we do what we do is because I know we inspire a lot of other econ businesses. So if we act appropriately and, you know, with a level of sort of compassion for our fellow man, I think they will as well. So I think, you know, it all just goodness begats more goodness. But you have to give props to the first guys that went out there and went, we can help the NHS here. Okay, let's do it. Do you know what I mean? What's it going to cost? Don't know, but it's the right thing to do. Let's just do it. Do you know what I mean? And I think now, for me, whenever I'm walking, I'm not really a coffee guy, but if I'm walking down the street and I want to grab a quick sandwich or a cup of tea or whatever else, and I've got a few different options, I know who I'm voting for in my pants. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think lots of people in our world, in e-commerce and marketing and brand, they obviously talk about driving loyalty. Yeah. I can't think of a better way of driving loyalty than doing something that's actually got nothing to do with the business, but actually kind of having your finger on the pulse of like the nation or your audience or whoever that is. And it's a rare thing to see, isn't it? Like everybody's sort of obsessed with clicks and conversions and EMV. When actually the thing that really resonates with people is actually doing something with like a bit of heart and soul to it.
Brand of.
Yeah, it makes a difference, doesn't it? That's the thing. What makes a difference for you? What makes you tick? Like what got you into brand and what really kind of keeps you getting up in the morning and coming to work?
What got me into doing this was the music industry. I was making music, I was working in music. I fell in love while doing that with the way the music industry did marketing. I thought it was so smart, and I'd never seen anything like it, and I didn't realise how calculated every single thing they did was. I think music is culture, right? I think the best way to market is through culture. And so got into it that way, and like I said, I took a lot of those learnings into my agency. And then Gymshark is exactly that. Gymshark was a subculture that was sort of underrepresented. There was this new era of people training that was coming out, right? You had like this chasm between like huge dudes that were, you know, international chest day on a Monday, bald head, big neck, all that over here. You had like sports athletes over here, and there was this new underrepresented audience of young guys and girls who were getting themselves in good shape, but they weren't that, but nor were they that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And Gymshark was the first brand that popped up and were like, we represent your culture, and it just kind of went from there. So that's what got me into it, was coming through music, and then obviously, like I said earlier, the agency, Gymshark, whatever else. And now the thing that gets me up in the morning is just this mission of uniting the conditioning community. Like, again, this is what's so key to our employee evangelism. This is why when it comes to 6, 7 o'clock, whatever else, and they're still here doing their work, I feel like they don't mind carrying on doing their work. It's not I'm not being paid to do that. Do you know what I mean? It's just, the job's got to be done, because we all know what the mission is, and if I don't do it, it ain't going to get done, so I'll just do it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. There's been times where there's been things, and I've said to members of staff, we can't get that done next week, when we're going to do it, or whatever else, and someone said to me, would you do it on Sunday? And I'm like, okay, cool. Do you know what I mean? And there's no thought to, like, well, technically, 40 hours a week or any of that stuff. It's just, let's just do it. And it's just that mission, man. And like, it's really hard to describe unless you're on it. I don't think people understand, but I feel like everybody who joins this company feels like they have their little corner of this empire, and they have this, they're bought into the story, the pizza boy who is now, you know, going on to do what he's doing, and the brand that he's growing as a part of that, and they've all got their part to play in that mission and on the rocket ship, you know.
Yeah, Richard Branson used to talk about entrepreneurship. Is that something that you guys believe in here? So the 19-year-old girl who's recently joined the company comes up with the idea for Homeshark.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of thing that you want to instill that in employees to bring new, fresh ideas to whether it's campaigns, products, or?
Yeah, 100%. Honestly, I haven't put that much thought into it to give you an eloquent answer, but definitely. And I think it's kind of sort of weaved into the fabric of this company anyway, because Ben is the he's like the new Branson, the new Alan Sugar, and he like the way people are looking at Ben these days. Do you know what I mean? Despite the tucked in socks and the bad shoes, but I think it comes sort of part and parcel of what we do, and everybody knows that he got where he got to, and we're all sitting here today because of some of the smart ideas he came up with at the start, some of the the really disruptive thinking. So I think it kind of comes part and parcel of what we do. There's a lot of people here, a lot of people in this company that are sort of former entrepreneurs. Do you know what I mean? That have started their own thing before, had their own business, and we're all attracted to come and pool resources and pool ideas and thinking and come together to try and further this mission. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's fairly salient amongst the entire company, to be honest.
Yeah, so I think, like you mentioned before about obviously the music industry being quite an inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Are Gymshark the rock stars of the brand industry at the minute?
How arrogant would it be if I said yes to that? Or no, I don't know. I don't think I can answer that.
Let's put it a different way. I mean, obviously the campaigns that I've seen you do, so the one that you mentioned with like getting the celebrities to wish Gymshark happy birthday, that was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
But who else are you seeing in the industry that's like tearing up the rule book and just doing cool things? Who have you seen that's like really inspired you?
I've in the past, I'm going to be very careful with how I answer this. In the past, I've seen some really cool stuff from Brewdog, Patagonia, Pangaea. When Patagonia wrote "Don't buy this jacket" and put that ad out, I was like, man, that's so good. That's so good. Who else? I like Allbirds for what they do. Pret, like I mentioned earlier, got to big up Pret, and I don't think people think about that as a brand too often, but I have to big up Pret. Tesla for their thinking, like we talked about. Somebody asked me the other day, who's your favourite e-commerce brand? And I said Tesla, and that freaked them out, right? Because everybody wants me to go Allbirds, Yeezy, or what I mean, Fashion Nova or whatever else. But it's a weird answer to say Tesla, but I think they've got as much right to call themselves e-commerce as anybody else has. So yeah, I think if you look around, there's a lot of, for all the sort of greedy, nameless corporations that there have been in the past, I think there's a lot of really great businesses with great purpose coming to life at the minute. Like I said, because consumers are starting to vote with their pounds, I think that there's just more of a need for it. So yeah, there's a lot of inspiration knocking around.
Yeah, is it worth taking those risks? I mean, like, you see a lot of brands completely sit on the fence, frightened to death of upsetting anybody. Are you sometimes better off just picking red or blue and just doubling down and going with it?
Sometimes, for sure, yeah. It's hard to say, right? I think it's super dependent on the topic. It's a weird time for people at the minute, right? I feel like humans have never been as sort of divided as they are right now. Do you know what I mean?
Cancel culture is a big thing, particularly on social.
This is what I mean. So I think it's tough for me to give a blanket response and say either do sit on the fence or don't. But this is why the word unite is in our purpose, right? Because again, I don't think we've ever been as divided, right? And we've got this thing coming up soon, and I'll give you one tiny little line out of the voiceover. I was watching it earlier, like a draft version of it. Comes out January 1st. It's called United We Sweat, which is basically our new strapline for the year. Essentially saying community and fitness, right? United We, community, sweat, fitness. But there's a line in that campaign narrative which says, you don't have to love the same, look the same, or lift the same. Do you know what I mean? And I love that. Brilliant. It's so cool that it's just like fitness and the gym is a place where, listen, set what makes you different apart. Come here, and all that matters is working out, working hard, feeling good, man.
Does that help you grow into, like, obviously, like you've opened an office in Denver, you've got stuff out in APAC. You've taken on the partnership with GA. Obviously, things are going to grow and become more global. So from these sort of humble beginnings in the West Midlands, moving out to a global business, identifying that those cultures exist all over the world, does that help this business replicate what you've done first in Birmingham, then the UK, and then further afield?
Honestly, like, the honest answer is, From a brand marketing point of view, okay, yes, for the business as a whole, for operational reasons and everything else. From a brand marketing point of view, the geos and the lines between countries, I think, are less important to us in the brand team. It's more about sort of interest groups. So what I mean by that is, I think a bodybuilder in California and a bodybuilder in Birmingham have more in common than a bodybuilder in California and a soccer player in California, right?
Yeah.
So right now it's been that bodybuilding crew and, you know, some other sort of people on getting into their fitness journey and whatever else. For me, it's more about those sort of interest tribes rather than, you know, which patch of dirt you happen to be born in, right? Whether it was Connecticut or Essex or whatever else.
She probably started a dating site.
Yeah, maybe a gym fish or something like that. Plenty of sharks. But yeah, so for me, it's the interest-based thing, and those cohorts are more important. This is why, like, Gymshark's massive in California, right? We didn't have a US first strategy from back when Ben was in the garage. It was just
happened.
It was online forums talking about tracking macros and progressive overloading and how to improve your squat. And whoever visited those forums learned about Gymshark, right? And had similar interests. They bought into the brand, no matter where they lived, right?
This is the awesome thing. So you've given someone advice about how to work out correctly.
Yeah.
And you've done that all along from like the Home Shark stuff that you're giving people tips of like what to do at home, all the way through. So you're giving people advice. You're not pushing product.
No,
that's the really impressive thing comparative to lots of other brands that I see struggle.
Yeah.
The majority of your brand work, your advertising, you're not actually pushing products. You might occasionally on Black Friday say the 70% off, but the majority of what you put out, it's almost nothing to do with the product.
If you don't know, so we've really just launched an e-com app, right? 2 years before that, 3 years before that, we launched a training app. So before we had an app so you could buy product, we had an app so you could learn to lift, right? And squat and track your lifts and everything like that. And it's entirely free, right? Like, you know, there's a lot of fitness apps out there that's £5 a month, whatever else. Yeah. It's the biggest fitness influencers in the world that are Gymshark athletes, teaching you how to train the way they do it, squatting the way they do it, deadlifting the way they do it, teaching you their splits, whatever else, push, pull legs, blah, 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 not charging a penny for it, right? Like some of the most revered names in the fitness industry. Going back to what I said earlier, our purpose is uniting the conditioning community, right? It's not sell loads of leggings, sell loads of t-shirts. Yeah. That happens to be a part of what Gymshark does, but we're aiming towards a bigger purpose than that. So,
yeah. So what does the future look like? What does the global version, the GA investment look like?
I'd love to tell you, but then you might nick my ideas and start a gym brand.
About it. I've got enough going on.
Yeah, honestly, I think that if you picture the average Gymshark consumer in the middle and then draw a circle around them and think of all the wants and needs that person might have, you could probably figure out what Gymshark's roadmap will look like in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years' time. Do you know what I mean? And by the way, I'm not being facetious when I give you those timelines. This brand will be around long after I'm dead, right? This is a 100-year plus brand. We will be the biggest British brand ever, for sure. Yeah. And to be that, we're going to have to grow out this ecosystem idea that we have, and like I said, surround our customer and add value at all these different touch points, like we've done with the training app, like we've done with a few other little irons in fires that we have going at the minute. I don't want to give too much away too early, to be completely honest with you. But like I said, if you centre sort of, you know, the average Gymshark customer, have a think about them and what they might need, you could probably figure out where it is we're headed. Yeah.
So outside of Gymshark, what do you like to get up to?
I don't do anything outside of Gymshark.
Do you not?
Gymshark is life.
Just
no,
that's
I'm joking.
it.
What do I get up to? I tinker with my old Land Rover Defender. I'm not very good at stuff like that, but it's basically a big Tonka toy, and I like messing around with that. Defenders are made in Solihull, like 5 miles down the road from here. So they're from Birmingham, just like I am. I play instruments, which is like more of a meditation thing than anything.
What do you play?
All sorts, to be honest. I started off playing the guitar when I was a kid. I play the piano more these days. I used to play drums a bit and some other stuff. My dad bought me a barron. My family are Irish, right? So my dad bought me a barron, which is like the Irish drum. Nice. Bit of mandolin, stuff like that. So to be honest, the piano is more of I've had a long day and I don't want to look at my phone, but I've got a problem where my hands don't stay still. So if I don't have my phone in my hands, if I go and watch a film, I'm biting my nails, right? Yeah. I'm a nightmare. Look at them, they're trash because I'm like hyperactive. So the piano means I can't look at my phone and whatever else, right? So that's a nice little meditation thing.
Have you been in a band?
Second.
Have you been in a band?
Yeah, man. Proper. I was there. No, you know. So when I first started playing the guitar, I wanted to be Slash, right?
Brilliant.
So I bought a Les Paul, and I made the strap really, really long, like Slash does. So you basically got your arms all the way down here, and you're playing it at the bottom of there. But then the Arctic Monkeys came along, and Alex Turner, the front man, who I also thought was cool, and I was having an identity crisis at like 16 years old, had a Fender Strat and he used to wear it up there. So, like, in any given gig, I would go from playing Sweet Child of Mine at the end of my arm's length like this to Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor like this, because I was a young, impressionable kid. So, yeah, I was in a band.
So what sort of music are you into then?
Honestly, like, ask anyone about this. My Spotify Wrapped is a car crash, because, like, 1 minute I'll be listening to Mark Knopfler and some B-side that he did before he was in Dire Straits, right? And 2 minutes later I'm listening to Central C. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm all over the shop, man. I really am. Like, I love grime. I think that Talking the Hardest is the new national anthem. Love dancehall music. I love Queen so much. Like, I've seen Queen loads of times. I've seen We Will Rock You an embarrassing amount of times. I've got the Brian May replica guitar at home, signed by Brian to Noel. Wow. Brian May, which is really cool. So ridiculously eclectic. But I think that I went to university and studied music, so I think that happens, right? When you go and do that, because you sort of look deeper and you look past the actual music itself. Like, I know that Talking the Hardest is in A minor. I bet not many grime fans know that. Do you know what I mean? Like, about gigs. But yeah, so yeah, I'm into absolutely everything. What's
the best gig you've ever been to?
So it starts off tragic, but it gets better. Do you remember when the 7/7 bombings happened in London on the buses?
Yeah.
That weekend I was supposed to be in London watching watching Queen and Paul Rodgers in Hyde Park, but obviously the show got cancelled because of the terrible situation that happened. Rightly so. They moved it to the next weekend, and they printed across all the tour merch and everything saying the show must go on, right? Which obviously a reference to Queen, which was nice. And then the really nice thing that they did, they said anybody in the emergency services, police, fire, ambulance, whatever, was invited to the gig for free. So then this gig in Hyde Park became really, really like a huge gig in Hyde Park. Luckily I was in like the Golden Circle right at the front with my dad, right? I was a kid. And like halfway in between the show, I'd already seen the same show in Sheffield. Like I said, I'm a saddo, right? I'd seen the same show in Sheffield and Birmingham. But this one, they had like a moment where they came out, they talked about the terrible things that had happened the week prior. And Brian got the acoustic guitar, sat right out in, like, you know, the little gangway that comes forward. And I'm like right here, Brian May's right there. Got his acoustic guitar out. He said, I'm going to sing a song by the best rock star there ever was, apart from Freddie. And he sang Imagine by John Lennon, right? Just him and the guitar. Nice. And then like Paul Rodgers joined him for the second verse, Roger Taylor for the third verse. And I remember turning around as everyone's going, you know, that part of Imagine other people, yoo-hoo, like that. And I remember turning around and seeing like this sea of heads across Hyde Park. I couldn't see where it ended, all singing Imagine at the same time, right? And that was like
spine tingly.
Oh man, as I say it now, look, the hairs on the back of my arms. You know what I mean, and I was what, 15, 16, something like that. You know what I mean, I'm looking at my old man and feeling like he was the tallest man in the world because I was really short. And I remember thinking, like, I'll never forget this moment. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's got to be that one.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good note to leave it on.
There we go, man.
Noel, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the donation to the hospital as well.
Yeah, and obviously thanks for hosting us. And yeah, it's been really insightful. I hope the people that are watching it get a lot from that.
Me too.
They're inspired by it, and who knows, maybe there'll be another person that's watching this that'll be the next big British brand.
Hope so.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ed. Do that.
Nice one.